With us today is Dr. Rudman. Dr. Joel Rudman is, I guess, technically a former Florida House of Representative member.
Still
and is now
representative for the next 48 hours.
That was my first question is, so you've turned in your letter of resignation in order to qualify with the resign to run rule here in Florida that requires you to resign your active seat in order to run for another seat, which is the United States Congress, Florida's District 1. So, but before you've gone and resigned officially, you've released a flurry of different bills that you are submitting to the Florida House. Can you kind of explain to me what the idea is behind releasing these bills right in the Florida House and what you expect to happen to them once you're gone?
Absolutely, Chris. And unfortunately, I need to report that, I have 2 more bill slots that I could use. And I just got off the phone with the bill drafters literally 2 minutes ago. Unfortunately, the wheels of government move very slowly. I've had ideas in drafting since we were allowed to submit drafts. And we were allowed bills for drafting since December 6th. They've had some of my ideas since December the 10th. And unfortunately, some of those are just not going to be ready in time. It's been 3 weeks, but some of the ideas that I had for next session are so transformative that I may not be able to get those last 2 bill slots filled. Because like you say, I have 48 hours. The idea, though, Chris, is this was my agenda if I were to stay in the Florida House. And it's a pretty ambitious agenda. I mean, we can certainly talk about the 6 bills so far that have been filed. But, it's one of those things where I didn't want to resign from the Florida House. As you mentioned, it is a resign to run law that affects everyone in the state who runs for higher office. We waived that requirement for Governor DeSantis. We weren't smart enough to waive it for ourselves. And unfortunately, that's the hand I'm dealt, is that I have to comply with the resign to run law. That's actually one of the drafts that I have that I'm working on right now. Hopefully in the next 48 hours, I'll be able to file a bill that repeals the resign to run. But again, we'll see if it's ready. It has to be ready by the end of the day today because of the holidays. But the idea is, Chris, you get these bills out because this is my agenda. And even though I won't be there as of January the 1st, those bills, once they're filed, they do not die. It would then simply fall upon one of my colleagues to take the bill up, make it their own. And basically, it's like handing off the baton, right? They would be able to take that baton and run with it themselves. And I've had a lot of interest so far in my 6 bills.
And so you've had, and I'm just going to kind of give a quick overview, the 4 that really caught my attention: undocumented immigration, red flag law repeal for firearms. So I believe that's the one that changes the age from 21 to 18 to purchase a firearm, if I'm not mistaken.
So we can certainly talk about both of those. Those are the ones that seem to get the most attention. Just to clarify, on the gun bill that I filed, that was actually the first bill that I filed for the upcoming session. What it does 2 things. It repeals the red flag laws, which are those laws that basically take away due process from a person. A person can be accused of making a threat. A person can have an ex-boyfriend or an ex-girlfriend say, well, they said some threatening things to me. And it basically takes away due process from gun owners. So we're going to repeal those red flag laws, but we are also combining that with open carry, which, as you know, Chris, that's something that's been promised to the citizens of Florida for years now, and it's a promise that's never been kept by the legislature. I'm going to keep that promise. I have filed the open carry bill combined with the repeal of the red flag laws. We're giving Floridians what they want because as it stands right now, Chris, our gun laws in the state of Florida are more compatible with the gun laws in places like California, Illinois, and New York. And they literally have nothing to do with our surrounding states. Our surrounding states are known for their gun freedoms, places like Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi. I'm trying to make Florida more like our surrounding states. And truthfully, it's about time we earned the title of the gunshine state.
And so the other 2 bills that really caught my attention, just because I've heard about them so much and they're more local bills, the PA Beach, I guess, rights bill, for lack of a better term. This is something that's been going back and forth forever, for as long as I've been here, about whether or not you can step on the dry sand if you don't own the land, if you have to stay on the wet sand, or if there is wet sand, and the mean high water line, and all these other things that I don't think the average person, unless they have to dedicate, unfortunately, like I did, a lot of active work time to it. And then the other thing was the cash payments situation that I think, if I'm not mistaken, you put in front of the legislature a couple of years ago.
Last year, that's right.
Okay, so if you could just kind of run me through what you want to see in your perfect world. I go to the beach and blank happens.
Well, and so this fight goes all the way back to 2018. Again, this has been a local issue in places like Destin and Walton County for decades, but it's a local issue that should be handled by the local elected officials. Back in 2018, your state legislature got involved and they passed a law that basically took that authority, took that ability away from Walton County. Walton County now has to go through this very arduous legal process in order to create customary use. And it's a law that does not apply anywhere else in the state of Florida, Chris. So what my bill does, my bill repeals the legislation from 2018. Now, again, I'm not an attorney. I don't want to get down in the weeds. I don't want to dig into all the nuances of the law. But basically, in a nutshell, what my bill does, it gives Walton County citizens and elected officials the same rights as the citizens and elected officials of every other beachfront community, every other beachfront county in the state of Florida. I believe that when the state got involved, that was a bridge too far. I don't think the state has any business messing with local issues in Walton County, and I'm getting the state out of it.
And so just for the uninformed people that may not have heard of this before, basically as it is right now, the Walton County Beaches have a state law that says if you can walk on the below the mean high water line in the wet sand, but that's it, and you have to be transitory, right? You can't just like pop a squat.
So basically, anywhere else in Florida, you can traverse the sand, you can walk up and down it, you can throw a beach towel down. There's what they call customary use. The legislature back in 2018 said for Walton County to have any form of customary use, the county would have to sue each and every beachfront owner in the county in order to kind of, cobblestone together some form of beach access. And of course, that's just simply not possible. We don't want, the county should not be in the business of suing its citizens. And again, if you ask most people across the state, customary use is reasonable. It just simply says that when people like me used to go to Walton County 40 years ago, we could traverse the sand. We could throw down a towel for 45 minutes if we wanted to. We could snap pictures of the sunset. We feel like that's a right that citizens have as long as they are not, just subjecting property owners to these, unfair and undue like, for example, we don't want anybody climbing over the dunes. We don't want anybody getting in anyone's backyard, right? So we certainly want to respect property rights, but at the same time, you have to understand that these beaches are a state treasure, and they are not for the select few. They are for everyone.
So where's the line between somebody that, like you said, is like getting a beach towel out and sitting down for 45 minutes and somebody that has decided to like live beneath the high water line? Yeah. Where's the line there?
So unfortunately, right now, if you go down to Walton County, the line doesn't even exist. The line is being made up by the local beachfront owners. And that's why we have to get the state out of this process and let the citizens of Walton County decide what is best for them and their beach access. There are places, Chris, where you can go right now in Walton County and you can walk along that mean high water mark and no one even cares. They're very, very civil, very hospitable. But by the same token, you may walk another 20 feet down the beach and now you've come across a beachfront owner who's put traffic cones all the way out into the water. In some cases, Chris, I've been to beaches where they will actually put beach chairs. They will put cabana chairs, not just to the high water mark. They'll put cabana chairs all the way out into the lapping surf in an effort to basically say, do not walk anywhere on my beach. And of course, that violates every tenet of customary use. And so again, it's a very haphazard way of doing things. We need to get the state out of this, and we need to let the citizens of Walton County have their say.
So looking to your future, you're of course running to become a United States Congressman for everywhere from the Alabama state line in Escambia County all the way over into Walton County. Donald Trump has endorsed your opponent, Jimmy Patronis, the former state CFO. And a lot of people have gotten out because of that endorsement, but you haven't. How come you have decided to stay in the race? And what makes you different than frankly, your main opponent?
Well, because Donald Trump is my biggest fan, Chris. He just simply doesn't know it yet. I've been a Trump supporter since 2015. It's funny, my wife and I, we were cleaning out the garage the other day, making room for all these Rudman campaign signs that we're just inundated with requests for. So as I'm making space for campaign signs that are flying off the shelves, I come across my original MAGA hat from 2015. You remember, Chris, nowadays they have these sleek hats that are custom made. They have 45 and 47 written on them. I came across my original hat. You remember the originals. You remember what they look like. Very boxy, very square hats, And back in the day, I remember when I bought my MAGA hat, I gave them as Christmas presents to people. This is before Donald Trump was ever elected president. And my friends and neighbors would say, well, yeah, this makes sense. Make America great again. Who would possibly be opposed to making America great again? So I've actually been a Trump supporter since the very beginning stages. And so that's why I had no intention of getting out of this race. When you look at the candidates themselves and when you look at the stances that they have taken, just the stances that you and I have already gone over, the fact that we want to respect our U.S. currency, the fact that we want the beaches open and free to all, the fact that we want full and unfettered Second Amendment rights, the fact that we want to seal the border, build the wall, and hopefully we'll talk about my immigration bill. That's the bill that says if you're in Florida illegally, you're not allowed to file a lawsuit. You're not allowed to bring a civil action case against an American citizen or against someone who's here illegally, because technically you aren't supposed to be here in the first place. So when you look at my record, when you look at the medical freedom law that I got signed by Governor Ron DeSantis 2 years ago, when you look at my military bills that protect the private information of our special ops members, and the combat medics bill that enables combat medics to get a nursing degree quicker and easier, you will see that truly I'm the MAGA candidate. So again, that endorsement, we have a feeling that endorsement was bought and paid for. We have a feeling that the president himself, if he could come by and meet all of the candidates, I would be his man.
Perfect. And looking to the 28th, the primary essentially, is for all intents and purposes, according to the last election we had, is really the main election. Republicans are very strong in Northwest Florida. And so what is your plan for the next, whatever it is, 28, 30 days to win this election?
Do exactly what I've done for the last 2.5 years, which is be myself, be genuine. I mean what I say, and I say what I mean. So hopefully your viewers will go look at these bills, not just the bills that I'm filing now, but the bills that I filed last session and the session before, because your viewers will see that I am a hardcore conservative. I don't take no for an answer. I don't compromise. And that's exactly the kind of individual we need to succeed a character like Matt Gaetz. The people of Northwest Florida, they do not want to send a swamp creature to represent them. They do not want to send someone who doesn't even live in the district, which is the case with my opponent. He lives in Panama City. How's he going to represent someone in Blue Water Bay where he needs a GPS to find the address in Blue Water Bay? I've lived in Blue Water Bay, practiced in Destin, Florida. I was one of the original doctors of the Sacred Heart Hospital of the Emerald Coast in Sandestin. I own property in South Walton County. I currently live in Navarre, Florida, where I've lived and practiced for 20 years. So my footprint in Santa Rosa County, Okaloosa County, Walton County, my footprint is a very big one. And of course, I've had dealings with Escambia County, which is another important part of the district. Unfortunately, I've never lived in Escambia, but I have plenty of patients. And of course, our main hospitals are in Escambia County as well. So I'm going to continue to do what I've always done. I'm going to work and live and practice among the citizens. I'm going to get out and knock doors. And the response, by the way, so far, Chris, has been tremendous. This isn't like 2.5 years ago when I first came on the political scene and I was knocking on doors and people said, "Hey, who are you?" Because remember, 2.5 years ago, I didn't have anyone's endorsement either. I ran against someone with the Matt Gaetz endorsement, and I beat them 67% to 33%. So this is not uncharted territory for me to go against the grain and to also succeed. But what's different this time, Chris, 2.5 years ago, I'd knock on those doors and people wouldn't know who I was. I was just a normal family doctor. Now I have a record. So the other day, I'm knocking doors in Walton County. People I don't even know are running to the door as I'm walking away. And they say, "Hey, you're Rudman. You're Rudman. Come back here. You're great. We love everything you're doing. We love what you're doing for the beaches. We love what you've done in Tallahassee. We love what you did for medical freedoms." I think name recognition, Chris, has been much more important this time around. I now have a record where people know my accomplishments. And if they don't know my accomplishments, I encourage them to Google search me, Joel Rudman, or they can go to electjoelrudman.com and read all about me.
So a lot has changed here in the last month on the Matt Gaetz thing. You brought him up a couple of times. And in our last interview, you talked about how you're pretty much, you consider yourself the heir apparent to Matt Gaetz. With all of the changes that have taken place in the political landscape in the last month, is Matt Gaetz still the person that you kind of view yourself as an archetype of?
So I think when we talk about representation for Congressional District 1, we're talking about a certain type of personality. So of course, I'm going to be myself. Of course, when you vote for me, you're voting for the Freedom Doctor. You're voting for Dr. Joel Rudman. You're voting for someone who does not back down. And so that, I think, is what people have come to expect. What they've seen and what they've liked about Congressman Matt Gaetz, people will admit that, oh, Congressman Matt Gaetz, he doesn't back down either. He says what he means and he means what he says. So in that respect, I'm going to continue that legacy, that you're not sending someone to D.C. to be a career politician. That is not my MO at all. You're sending someone there who's going to speak out for your priorities. You're speaking out for someone who's going, you're sending someone who's going to speak out to protect our military, to preserve the mission for our military folks and the military bases in the area. And you're sending someone who is a strong conservative who will not stand down. And a good example you mentioned when we first started talking was the most recent bill I filed having to do with illegal immigration. Again, that bill, if you will Google search that bill, it kind of flew under the radar, which surprised me. This is a bill that everyone in Florida should be talking about, if you ask me, because we came up with a novel approach. We are telling illegal immigrants that, look, if you're here illegally in the state of Florida, don't expect to get any perks. Don't expect to get any benefits out of being an illegal who happens to live in the greatest state in the union. We were thinking of ways to not entice people to Florida, by dangling these carrots in front of them, Chris. And to me, as a physician, one of the biggest entitlements, one of the biggest ways you can encourage someone to come here illegally is you dangle the promise of a big payday, right? So you think about trial lawyers. You think about an illegal immigrant who isn't supposed to be here in the first place. Let's say they go to the ER. Let's say they don't like the way that the doctor stitched them up. And now a trial lawyer wants them to sue that hospital for malpractice, sue them for millions of dollars. Let's say an illegal immigrant's out here driving on 98 and somebody gives them barely a love tap, which I've actually heard reports of. I've heard reports of constituents barely touch somebody on 98, and a carload illegal immigrants will just pour out onto the highway, everyone clutching their necks, right? Because they see the promise of a big payday. We're going to say, if you're in this country illegally, you do not have the right, you do not have the legal standing in a Florida court of law to bring a civil case against someone who's here legally. So in other words, no slip and falls, no auto whiplash accidents if you're an illegal immigrant, no medical malpractice. You were not supposed to be in this state in the first place. We're not going to let you use our courts. We're not going to let you use our legal system as your free lottery ticket.
All right. Well, Dr. Joel Rudman is, again, he is currently the District 3 representative in the Florida House over in Tallahassee. He is running to be your District 1, Florida District 1 United States Congressman. That election takes place January 28th for the primary
So
and April 1st for the general.
look at it this way,
Sir.
Chris. When you're toasting on New Year's Eve, when you're counting down the seconds to the end of my tenure in the Florida House. Isn't that something?
That is one way to look at it. I will be asleep for several hours. I promise you that. But anyway, thank you so much for your time, sir, and best of luck in the future.
Thank you, Chris.